metabolic system of any mammal. We gave you the sloth or sloth, the panda and the koala. Needless to say, it's the sloth. Is in the name, right? Slothing around? Yeah, welcome back. Thanks for being with us this morning. Aisha and Christopher are here too. Let's remind you what's still coming. In a moment is Harry Potter author J K Rowling, a national treasure. We're taking your calls. We're asking because she's come up in the Scottish National Party's leadership contest. And then, should we release burglars early to ease overcrowding in prisons? Then a few more stories from the papers and everywhere else. And Olympic legend Sir Steve Redgrave is rowing his way here as we speak. Then Storm joins us with Jeremy Vine Extra. She'll be with Jasmine Dottiwalla and Carol Malone. And if you want to get in touch, the number is 0207 862 2222. All right? Landline, we love 16p a minute. Mobile, not so much, because sometimes the voice cuts out and they can cost more. You can also type Jeremy Vine on 5 into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. And we are on TikTok. Now, your calls on whether J K Rowling is a national treasure, 0207 862 2222. Before we do this, have a look at the books here, okay? I'm gonna test you too. Oh God. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, so the 7 Harry Potter books. Let's come and focus it. I'm leaving aside these two, The Cursed Child and The Fantastic Beasts. Which is the first one? We've got Deathly Hallows, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, Goblet of Fire, Prisoner of Azkaban, Chamber of Secrets, Philosopher's Stone. Which is the first one?
Philosopher's Stone.
Brilliant.
Right.
Brilliant. Which is the second one? There it gets harder.
About Azkaban.
Azkaban.
Goblet of Fire.
It's actually the Chamber of Secrets, the second. So we've got Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets. What's the third one? You're right. Yes, you said Azkaban. Take that. That's
yes,
the third.
Good, thank you.
Can we go fourth? What comes after Azkaban?
You said it.
Think about Goblet.
Goblet of
Well done, Aisha.
Well done, me. Well done.
Okay, we've got 3 left now. The Half-Blood Prince, The Order of the Phoenix, and the Deathly Hallows.
Deathly Hallows.
You're close, but it is the Order of the Phoenix. Look at the size of that.
Bigger.
Chunk of a...
So which was the last one? Was it the Hallows or the Half-Blood Prince?
Hallows, last one.
That is correct. Well done. You're just a little bit ahead on your Harry Potter there.
Yeah.
That's it. So there they are. And she's come up. Oh, this is such a story to explain, isn't it? She's come up in the SNP leadership thing as part of a live debate. There are 3 candidates. They all want to be the next leader. Let's have a look.
Is J K Rowling a national treasure?
Yes, and I do think she's brave.
Do you disagree with her on the issue of transgender rights?
No, I don't disagree with her.
You don't disagree with her,
No.
so you back her on that. Ash?
I think she's a national treasure, yes. I think she was very brave to speak out on an issue where many women who had raised legitimate concerns were receiving, quite threatening communications. So, yes, she's definitely a national treasure.
OK.
And Hamza Yusuf's question was much more equivocal. Yeah. So J.K. Rowling, 57, one of Britain's most successful authors of all time. 600 million copies, right? So the way she comes into the Scottish National Party race is this. She lives in Scotland and she's very angry with the SNP's policy on gender identity. So she says, here's a tweet, I stand in solidarity with 4 women Scotland and all women protesting and speaking outside the Scottish Parliament. She doesn't like the idea that a person who's biologically male can wake up one day and decide that they are a woman. That's fundamentally her issue with it. Next one, let's have a look. I don't know how many of these we've got. People who meant... So she's now taken exception because in the NHS, somebody stopped using the word woman and used the word people who menstruate. She says, I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Was it wumban, wimpand, womaned? So there we are. That's the criticism of the lack of the word women. J.K. Rowling says, if sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. And she called Nicola Sturgeon, this is the crucial thing, a destroyer of women's rights, Aisha.
So I take a deep breath for a word into this because this whole row has just become so toxic. It has become near impossible to have a nuanced, compassionate and common sense debate around the transgender.
And we can decide at what point we show the photo of Isla Bryson, which has become
and
a daily habit
was
here.
The absolute kind of thing that sort of tried to. I mean. J K Rowling is an incredible woman. She's an incredible writer. You've gone through all her books, not just these books. She writes under another name as well, and has written some amazing.
J K Galbraith
has written some amazing books. Her backstory in terms of the oppression she faced, she was a single mother. She had her own issues with domestic violence. I'm listening actually to a podcast at the moment called The Witch Trials of J K Rowling, and her kind of story about how she became this sort of writer. She's donated loads of money to great causes. But what's interesting is in this podcast, even using her own words, she said, I don't want to be on this pedestal. I don't think she herself wants to be this thing held up. She's like, I want to express my views on things. She has done that. She's got every right to express those views. There is a lot of toxicity around this debate, and I would say that no, I don't think so. I don't want to be pushed into a yes, no kind of right, wrong thing. I think there is a middle ground throughout this. I drafted the Equality Act when I was in government, which sets out the law in terms of protecting single-sex spaces, which I think is really important. The Equality Act says you must not discriminate against trans people, but you must also you can protect single-sex spaces.
Let's at this point see our picture of Isla Bryson, which is when the whole thing blew up in Scotland. So this was a male rapist who then, most people would say, pretended to be a woman to get into a women's jail.
I would agree with that.
And he blew the whole thing wide open. But maybe that's a really unfair example, Chris, to use.
Well, I mean, is she a national treasure? I mean, you look at those books, look at the work, look at what she's done for charity. Yes, she is. And on the issue, I mean, she didn't want to. She is trying to say, isn't she, that being a woman is hard. It can be hard. That all the changes you go through in your life, and it's hard for men to say they are suddenly women without going through that lived experience. That's part of it.
Well, look, there is,
and you can see
again, I have a lot of sympathy with what she kind of says, but this debate has become so toxic. On the other side of it as well are trans people who are now, because of the Isla Bryson thing, feeling frightened. They are vilified. They're not just laughed at, they're hounded in many ways. And I have seen, particularly online, the most horrible comments lobbed at both sides. I've seen death threats against J K Rowling, which is unacceptable. Her address has been given out to people. She's probably had to have more security. On the other hand, I've seen also people absolutely being horrible and vile. People saying we don't want trans people. We should try and get rid of trans people.
Let's bring in Heather Herbert, a trans rights campaigner who is based in Aberdeen. And Heather, you've heard our panel talking there. I'll start by asking you if you think that J K Rowling is the national treasure.
Do you mean she's a dusty relic that should be locked up in a museum away from people? I think that's a little bit harsh, to be honest. I think like Enid Blyton or Roald Dahl, she's written some really good children's books. Some really, personally, I loved her books growing up. But is she a national treasure? But if you're going to separate the art from the artist, then you're going to separate the art from the artist. Her children's stories definitely are. She's donated huge amounts of money for the likes of us to charities, but she's also made transphobic statements that have played a part in rape crisis centres being hounded with loads of abuse.
So when you say transphobic, she's expressed her disagreement with the idea that a person can choose their gender, correct?
Yeah. So most trans people and most LGBT campaign groups would call her statements transphobic.
Right.
And as you say, even in the podcast that she released recently, she knew that her statements were going to be inflammatory. She knew that it would upset her fans.
Okay, I will say that J K Rowling has denied being transphobic, saying she respects every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them, and she wants trans people to be free from discrimination and abuse. So I should say, and actually, I mean, she's also separately, Heather, said that she loves trans people. So would you not say that when it all came to a head with that Isla Bryson, very unfortunate Isla Bryson case in Scotland, and in that moment, she sort of won the argument?
I don't think so. So I think there's been a lot of misinformation about the Gender Recognition Reform Act. This is slightly off topic, I know, but that act had no effect on Isla Bryson being in prison or which prison she went to or not. Prior to very recently, when Isla was convicted, there was a risk assessment done, and the risk assessment said that she would be a danger to women prisoners, so she was put into a male prison.
Right, I understand, but the bigger picture surely is that as a result of Nicola Sturgeon's policies, people are able to change gender if they want to, and that may be very, very healthy in 99.9% of cases, but there is often an outlying case like the Isla Bryson one, which allows people to argue very strongly against it.
People can change gender whenever they want. All the Gender Recognition Reform Act would allow trans people to change their birth certificates. So, for example, my birth certificate says male. If I die, or when I die, if I get married, my death certificate and my marriage certificate will have to say male. Gender Recognition Reform Act just allows that to be noted as female. It doesn't grant any more rights. It doesn't allow anything else to happen.
Understood. Stay with us, Heather. Holly's in London. Holly, do you think J K Rowling is a national treasure?
Yes, I do. I think before she's an author and a wonderful philanthropist, she's a British citizen and she's got a right to her opinion. Her job should not deflect from that. Also, she pays loads in tax to this country, so I think we need to show her a bit of respect. Also, I think trans rights need to be respected as well, but just because the trans person is making changes in their life, I will accept their new pronouns and things like that, but I'm not making changes to my life. I'm a woman. I want to use women's toilets with women. So get separate toilets, gender neutral toilets.
Let's see how Heather responds to that.
Nothing in the GRR affects the Equality Act.
That's a bit technical.
I would
Heather.
still use
Heather, sorry, Holly's saying she's a woman who wants to use toilets with women, by which I think
you can do that now. You've been able to do that for a long time. You've been able to do that for a long time in the law.
Holly, there's no issue here apparently.
Yeah, I think people are getting very, very sensitive and a bit scared to approach the subject, particularly in the workplace and things like this. My point is, just because a trans person is making changes in their life, I will acknowledge new pronouns, new names, things like that. But you will not force me into making other changes, and I will not tiptoe around you.
How about that, Heather?
Fine, whatever. I'm not asking you to. I wouldn't ask her to make any changes. The law is
Holly,
a law, and it's been so since 2010.
Holly, you don't have to make changes that are that big, do you? I know I'm a bloke saying this, so it's difficult for me.
No, I know, like Marks and Spencer made the changing rooms gender neutral and things like that. I don't shop in Marks and Spencer's anymore because I don't think it's appropriate. Look at the case of Isla Bryson,
We've done that.
offender, and if he was outside, he would be using the women's toilets, changing rooms, things like that. Not safe, don't like it. If these companies want to follow this sort of trend at the moment, then they need to create gender neutral spaces and let the customer, the consumer, make the choice of where they want to go.
We've drifted a little bit off, I suppose, off Rowling and the SMP.
Yeah.
But just before, thank you, Holly.
J K Rowling is fantastic, and we need to show her more respect.
Thank you. Just for a second on the SMP leadership race, which I know feels like a distance away. It is interesting, isn't it? Because Kate Forbes is definitely there, and Humza Yousaf is there, and Ash Regan I'm not sure about. And I don't know who's going to win it.
I think Kate Forbes is...
I think she's going to win.
Ash Regan will decide because her votes will go to the winner, and I guess that's going to be.
I think Kate Forbes. I think Kate Forbes.
Because Humza Yousaf is this continuity sturgeon candidate.
Who are you supporting, Heather?
I don't get a vote. I'm not a member of the SMP. I'm in the Green Party.
Who are you supporting?
I'm not supporting either Ash or Kate.
Okay.
I mean, also should be said,
I
Kate
think
Forbes...
both of their views on, particularly on things like abortion, are very
marriage.
problematic.
Okay, all right, thank you. Heather Herbert, nice to see you. And after the break, is it right to release burglars early? 0207 862, I think I've got the number down here. 0207 862 2222 is the number. We'll see you. Give us a call very shortly. Which planet is the Valles